Hello and welcome to the iLearn at Craigslea Parent Information Session. This is for our 2022 BYOD iPad program for years 3 to 6. Our iPad program has been running successfully for a number of years in years 4 to 6. In 2022, we have decided to extend this program to include the year 3s. However, this will be a trial introductory process. 2022 Year 3 parents will not be expected to purchase new devices for their child. Instead, we are encouraging families with existing devices to allow their child to use their device as an educational tool in the classroom from Year 3. Teachers in Year 3 will not be using them in the same capacity as years 4 to 6. However, they will be using them to familiarise students with using iPads as educational tools in the classroom for the purpose of improving their digital literacy skills and prepare them for the technological requirements of their future education. Welcome to the information session. We're going to be talking about a number of things today. Firstly, we'll introduce our team, the team of teachers and support staff who support our iLearn at Craigslea team. We'll go through our program overview and the purposes of running our iPad program. Look at how iPads are used in the classrooms. Here we'll be hearing from teachers and how they've used them in the classrooms. We'll also look at the specifications and what we are required or what iPad versions are the best ones to use in the classroom. Student and family responsibilities will also be talked about, as well as our next step, which is our information session, our Zoom session that we're holding next Wednesday, the 13th of October at 6 p.m. The iLearn team is made up of a number of people. This information session is being presented by Alison Jones and Shani Meiklejohn, who are currently classroom teachers, as well as Amanda DeSoto, who is currently a targeted learning teacher, but has also a lot of experience working in the upper years in previous years. We also have Tess Bryce, our teacher innovation, who is our librarian and teaches digital technology. These teachers have been part of the iPad program for a number of years. In addition, we have Rob Lee Williams, who provides us with our technical support here at Craigslea. Think about the technology that you use in your life at present. How many smart devices do you have in your home? TVs, watches, Google Home, tablets. Technology is continually changing, and while we are not just teaching children about current technology, we are teaching children to enhance their learning through the use of technology. It's about problem solving, thinking creatively, and outside the box, allowing students multiple opportunities to communicate, demonstrate, and share their understanding and learning. It's a journey, and at Craigslea, we believe that technology plays a major role in our lives, and we cannot ignore it. We believe in embracing this and using emerging technologies to enhance and enrich our education.
Our iPad program has a number of different purposes. As you've just heard, we believe it develops the knowledge and skills necessary for 21st century workforces. It also enables personalisation of student learning. Students have continuous access to educational materials, and we believe it strengthens the links between home and school because students are able to take the work home with them that they have done that day. It adds value to our existing practice. This is really important because people often believe that iPads are replacing something. We are adding value through the use of the iPads. Research shows that technology increases student engagement. It's in line with high school expectations. It is more sustainable than using paper copy work. It aligns with our digital technologies curriculum. It increases ICT and problem solving skills, and it is the future.
So how do we use iPads in our classroom? Well, firstly, I think differentiation is a key thing here because we can differentiate and provide different material for different students that meets their individual needs. They have access to rich and current resources. We have Google at our fingertips when we want to look up information. We learn critical information literacy skills, and we also can give instant feedback on student work. You'll see this shortly when you hear about some of our teachers, what our teachers are doing in the classroom. It encourages collaboration between students, and there are a number of open-ended apps that we use. That rather than the drill and practice, this is not a replacement for pen and paper. As Amanda said earlier, it is about adding value to our existing learning. We have access to our emails and a number of our resource scheme subscriptions. have a listen to what our teachers have got to say about how they use iPads in their own classrooms. So let's hear from some of our teachers. The following slides, you'll hear from some classroom teachers. They're actually classroom teachers who were teaching last year in 2020. So this was a presentation put together. It's still very relevant. So while Mrs. DeSoto and Ms. Meiklejohn are talking about the classrooms, they're talking about their 2020 classrooms, however, still very relevant today. Let's hear from them.
Hi, Amanda DeSetto here. I'm currently a Year 4 teacher. I've been on the iPad program for a number of years now, and I just want to show you a few things that I'm doing in my classroom around the use of the iPads. So I guess with the iPads at its simplest form, it's a really great way of sharing lessons. So where you can see the fractions here, that's actually just a little bit of a snip of some student work that they have done through a lesson that I have shared with them. What I will say about this though is that it's amazing the difference it can make when students are able to use the iPad functions rather than a pen and paper in order to show things like diagrams and their working. Some very reluctant writers don't hesitate when it comes to working on their iPad. Now, where it says speech to text here, this is a good example of student support. Again, for someone who might be a reluctant writer or for someone who needs extra scaffolding with their writing, the iPads are a really functional tool to be able to do things like speech to text. Also, text to speech, which isn't shown here, but students being able to have large sections of text where it can then be read out loud to them. So it actually does break down barriers in a way to support students with their literacy learning. Here you can see a science assessment task that used to be a paper and pen copy booklet, which has been transformed into a digital presentation on a science topic using Microsoft PowerPoint. So the students are able to show their learning not only through text but through their use of images. They also took photographs of work within their book and they uploaded it into the PowerPoint to be able to show their understanding about the life cycle of an animal. With the writing analysis, I was able to share with my class large pieces of text for the purpose of them analysing the structure. And you can see here the student has used colour coding to be able to highlight the different sections, to be able to see how paragraphs are made up of different ideas and different arguments. Video and audio editing is another really fun way for the students to engage in their learning that we wouldn't be able to do without the technology like the iPads. So for my students' drama and media assessment last term, they created a movie. They filmed all of their scenes, put them onto iMovie, and then used that software to show their editing to create a polished film. The use of a green screen is also another really fun way to engage the students in media practices. The last thing I want to show you from Year 4 is just some way that I collect some data on the students. It's very purposeful because it allows me to collect data in real time, so I can use software programs and apps to set up quizzes and assessments. The students complete those and it sends me the results live. So I can very easily see at the end of a lesson, or if I'm getting ready to do an assessment and I want the students to do some revision, I can very easily see those students who need some extra learning and some extra support. I can also very easily see the students that need extension. The students are really engaged in this type of learning. They find these quizzes really fun. It also gives them immediate feedback on how they're going, so they can analyse how they are feeling with their learning and whether there's an area that they need to work on.
Hi there, I'm Shani Meiklejohn. I'm the Year 4-5 composite class teacher and I've been involved with the BYOD program since its very inception. I'm here to talk about the way I'm using my iPads in my classroom, specifically around the ability to give students good quality feedback and being able to differentiate class content to suit a whole range of learners. On the slide you're looking at, there's a few different work samples that I've taken from my class over this year and last year. The force diagram on the far left of your screen, a student had to draw a diagram and write an explanation about the experiment that we conducted. Underneath, you can see that what the iPad has allowed me to do is see the students' work immediately and give them some timely feedback, which in terms of students being able to correct their work and improve it, it's a really valuable tool. The middle image is looking at student reading and looking at their comprehension and being able to have the same piece of text in front of me as the students are reading and be able to pick up on the things that students are doing well and the things that they still have to work on. The other slide on the far right of the screen is about students' reading goals and our ability to track how students are going with their goals and to give them feedback on what they still have to improve and work on. So one of the things that the iPad program has allowed us to do really effectively is be able to differentiate the work that we're doing in our lessons to a whole range of different learning abilities. On the screen is an example of a typical maths lesson for my Year 4, Year 5 class. So on the far left is the classwork that is the sort of the minimum year level expectation, so that the work that every student is expected to be able to do. And on the other sides of the screens, the other sections of the OneNote has practice for that particular concept for the fast finishers, and then underneath that is work for extension students who are well above what the year level expectation is. So the OneNote allows us to provide for a whole range of learners in a whole range of contexts, and it's right there at their fingertips. And it also means that with the work that the students are doing on the screen at any one time, that we can keep tabs on how they're going and if they're making mistakes in any of these areas. One of the other really effective uses of the iPads that we've found this year is with spelling and dictation. The students all get a paper copy of their spelling list because they cut up a word sort and they get to know the spelling rules for each particular week and each particular list. And out of those spelling words, I write dictation sentences for the children as a handwriting and listening activity, as well as testing that they understand the spelling of their spelling words. Of course, in my class with such a wide range of learners, the iPads has given me the ability to be able to put all my dictation and my spelling lists onto the iPads via OneNote. So what this has meant is I've been able to record myself saying the dictation sentences for each spelling group for each week. And what this has meant the students have been able to do is assess themselves at their own pace. This is very handy if you have learners who have auditory processing problems and need a few more repetitions of things before they write them down if they have to listen to them first. So this has been a fantastic resource to have for that, as I do have a couple of learners who do struggle with writing things down that they've heard out loud as opposed to copying off a screen. This has also meant that I've been able to give extension spelling to those learners who are really quite competent in this area, but that the main benefit is that every child has spelling at their level and they have their dictation at their level and, more importantly, at their own pace. So this has been a fantastic resource to have for each student in the class with respect to doing this.
I upload all my PowerPoints to OneNote, so while I'm teaching them and they're visible on the screen in front of the students in the classroom, other students actually have access to them on their iPads in front of them as they're working, so they can move around the room. They don't even have to be in the room to access the lesson anyway. So as I'm talking, they go through the lesson on their iPads, and they can interact and write on top of their own version on their iPads as we go. And you can see in this literacy warm-up slide, the student has actually typed in and he's written his responses as he's gone through. You can draw on them, you can highlight. Here's some words he's highlighted that he knows and understands the words of these, the vocabulary we're going to be using in the lesson. And yeah, so they can interact with it as we go through. It makes it much easier, allows for differentiation, and it also means that students can catch up if they happen to be at home learning from home. Here is an example of how I've used technology in a different way. Last term, as an example, we wrote feature articles and students got to upload their own individual feature articles as PDFs to an online forum. Here they were able to read each other's feature articles, kind of like a social media platform, and they got to comment, and we did lots of discussions around appropriate ways to provide feedback to our peers on their articles, and it was a way that we could share them online. So this was a really powerful tool in sharing the work that we'd been completed using a digital forum. This year, we actually started using Microsoft Teams. For those parents out there who use Teams in their workplace, we're actually loving it. It's a great way that we can communicate with our students. We have our own class teams. You can see there on the left-hand side there, we have a number of channels. I've got all the subjects on the left-hand side. And one example, one way that I've used Teams is with art. So the kids have created their art projects. They had to create a monument, and then they took photographs of how they wanted to display their art. I got them to upload to the art channel. They uploaded their image, and they also then had to reflect on their piece of work, which I could then assess their writing. The great thing about this is that they get to share each other's work. They get to share their own work and then even comment on each other's. For feature articles this term, rather than what I did last year, this year we uploaded to Teams, and students were actually encouraged to read and comment on each other's articles, and to give really good quality feedback. We talk about it looks a little bit like a social media kind of platform. However, the language that we use is formal, and it's used for in a formal way. So I did have some conversations with students this year about their way that they were commenting and creating new posts, I guess, in forums here, and I did actually mute some students so they weren't able to use it. So it's really easy to control as a teacher, and it's a great way to communicate and share work. I also used it for assignments and allocate homework online. This was really great as well. So OneNote isn't only just used for teachers to upload their lessons, but for also to show students understanding or demonstrate their own learning. So for example, what you can see here are two examples of maths OneNote, and on the right hand side, top right hand side, you can see there are a student has the task was they had to go around the classroom, find examples of rectangles, and we're learning about perimeter and area. So they had to then take photographs of the rectangles that they'd found, measure them, upload the photographs into OneNote, and then perform the calculations. So they had to work out the perimeter around the rectangle, and then the area of that same rectangle. You can see I've also made some notes here for the student to make. I provided feedback to that student, like Shani was talking earlier, around making sure that they use the square centimeters when they're in their answer. The one in the bottom left-hand corner is an example of me demonstrating how we can solve volume. We're looking at the difference between volume and capacity, and in this lesson, students used the 1 centimeter cubic MAB blocks, and they had to construct almost like a Minecraft style 3D object, and then calculate the dimensions of that 3D shape that they created, a 3D rectangular prism, and then basically count the number of cubes. So you can see here this one was 3 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, which equated to 12 cubic centimeters, and then we counted to make sure we had 12 cubic actual physically counted the 12 cubic centimeters to make sure our calculations were correct. So it's an example of manipulating actual real materials, taking photographs of them, uploading and demonstrating their knowledge. So an example of students being able to add value, like that extra dimension to their learning and their understanding, as opposed to pure just pen and paper or worksheets. Here's another example of how students have used the camera functionality to upload their images to OneNote and demonstrate their understanding. So here we've got a science experiment that they've taken photographs over this particular time and then made comments and observations, recorded their observations on their OneNote, and I have got the photographs as evidence. So it just gives that extra dimension to their understanding and showing what they know. So iPad specifications. We get a lot of questions from parents asking about what type of iPad should they buy for their child. We ask that the iPad that you get is Wi-Fi only, firstly. There is no need to have a SIM card. Realistically, if you want to use data and you don't have access to a data of you're using the iPad camping, it's just as easy to hotspot your own, like your phone, to give that iPad data access. So there's no SIM card is really required. If students do come with SIM cards, we actually ask them to remove them. It's really important that students are protected on our education network and they access the network. And if they're at school and they're accessing the network through an alternative way, we cannot control what they have access to. So it's really, really important that it's a Wi-Fi only iPad. Other than that, iPad Air, iPad Pro, any of those are okay. If you can currently buy one retail, it should suffice. Generally speaking, an iPad we would expect to last approximately 4 years, as long as you can update with the current iOS update. So if we can put the current software, it's iOS software on there, then it's suitable. Minis are not really recommended. If you have a mini, we often had difficulty with them, so we do not recommend a mini. But any current retail iPad you can purchase is fine. 32 gig is sufficient. However, I have found that sometimes if the kids are using them personally as well and they're saving lots of videos or taking lots of photographs and saving them on their iPad, if they don't have cloud storage, then 34 does kind of run out. It is sufficient for school if you're using it for school. However, if I recommend that probably 64 gig is better. Other tablets are not compatible with our school system. We have trialed in the past using alternative devices, but the decision has been to go with Apple iPads. It's really important to grab a suitable case too. The kids move around with them, they get put in their bags. A sturdy case is really, really important, and screen protection as well. Styluses are not essential, however they are very, very handy, and an Apple Pencil is a very handy tool. However, it is an expense and it is not a requirement. However, we have recently decided that keyboards are a requirement. So if you can get a strong case with a keyboard or an attachable keyboard, they aren't expensive. You can get Bluetooth ones from quite reasonably. They're just really helpful to help with kids' typing skills using an actual keypad rather than just the touch screen on the device. Kids are really good at touching screens, but actual keyboard skills using the appropriate fingers and things like that is actually really handy. So keyboard is a must. Stylus is optional.
There will be a core app list that is sent home between now and the end of the year, and these will be a list of apps that will be used across the 3 years of the program. These are all free. Now, at the beginning of each year, teachers may give you information about other apps that they need to use in the classroom or to be downloaded during the school year. If something comes up, teachers may be in contact with you and say, can you please download this app? These will all be free apps.
When students sign up to the iPad at Craigslea program, they must adhere to their responsibilities in looking after their iPads. Firstly, needs to come to school every day fully charged. So it's their responsibility to make sure that it's charged overnight, ready to come to school. It's to stay in their school bag at all times before and after school. It's not to come out of their school bag. During the school day, it's locked in class and used only for school purposes. Students who are caught using their iPad who outside of these school hours or for using it that's not in line with school policy will have their iPad removed from them and have their account access disabled for a period of time, depending on individual circumstances. Students need to make sure that they are safe with their iPad, both physically when they're carrying them around, as well as online safety. These programs will be discussed with students and their teachers at school. It has to go home every night and used appropriately while at school. While they're at home, they are allowed, it's their own property and they can use it for games if that's how you see that's okay at home. However, while they're at school, it's for school use only. So no game should be running in the background. They need to be closed and it's used appropriately. Students are required to check and monitor their software updates, making sure their apps are current. As I said before, learning activities are only for school time. Consequences for not following these responsibilities mean that they will have their device removed from them. It needs to have suitable storage to make sure it's safe. And we do use Apple Classroom, and I'll be discussing that in a minute on the next slide. So Apple Classroom is an app that is installed into a teacher's iPad, and students actually can access in their settings and join the Apple Classroom. What this allows is it allows the teacher to actually monitor the children in their classroom and actually see what they're doing on their iPads. They can lock the iPad so that they're only using it using a particular app. They can open apps for them to say open an iPad. They can actually lock the iPads altogether. At the end of the day, once Apple Classroom is closed, teachers can get a little report on the amounts of time that each student has been on particular apps throughout the day. So you can get a bit of a report and see as to what kids are doing. Now, this is really helpful because it actually just, at any time, it can show the teacher what the student is actually doing on their iPad. So it's an easy way to monitor, or it's an additional way to monitor. Not all teachers are using them, and not all teachers use it all the time, but it does come in handy so that we can monitor student usage. In addition to the student responsibilities, families also have some responsibilities when they sign their child up for the iPad program. The number one there is insurance. Now, it's really important to insure your child's iPad. You can add it to your home and contents insurance policy at home, or you can actually look into getting there's Apple insurance when you purchase a new iPad. It's important to make sure that they're charged, that your child is charging it, and that the core apps that we've provided, or the school has provided at the beginning of the year, is being installed onto those iPads. Being part of the resource scheme is important because it allows also access to subscriptions through that iPad use. Through the subscriptions. It's important to support your child to participate completely into the scheme, which means they need to bring it every day. You need to be able to fix breakages promptly if they occur, and that all of the apps on their iPads are updated regularly. It's also important to monitor your child's usage and also the storage of on their iPad. So sometimes we find that students have a lot of games or they take a lot of videos, and that's completely fine to do in your own time. It's their device and outside of school hours. However, if it impacts on the student's ability to store things on their iPad at school, or it's affecting functionality, then it can become a bit of a problem. So please just make sure you're keeping an eye on how much space your iPad or your child is using and storing on their iPad. Now, we've got here monitoring of social media. Now, this is really important. Look, it's a personal preference. It's a personal choice for each family to make those decisions for their own children. Most social media functionality on apps, or anything that has some sort of group forum or chat functionality, they do require a 13+ age. It is very important that you have conversations with your children about how they're using and how they're chatting and communicating once they have access to this new technology. Even if you do not allow your child to have social media apps, there is the messaging functionality on the iPad, and we find that students do tend to use group messaging and have this group message where they send multiple, almost spam messaging to large groups of students or friend groups. So just keep an eye on it. Have an open conversation with your children about messages they're receiving and group chats that they're part of, and please talk to your teacher, your child's teacher, if you think there are any concerns or have any concerns about that sort of messaging. The other thing to mention here is also that your child's iPad is not to be used to contact them at school during the school day. If you need to contact your child, just call through the office like you would do if they were in any other year level. We've had situations where parents have actually tried to contact or message their child during the day to give them a message, and it creates confusion for students who aren't using they're receiving messages and then they're getting into trouble for it. So we need to make sure that no students are using any sort of messaging during the day. So if you do need to contact your child, you make sure you do it through the office.
Okay, so what are the next steps from here? Basically, we're having a question and answer Zoom session next Wednesday evening of week 2, which is the 13th of October from 6 till 6:30. You will receive an email invitation sent home to all parents, so you'll get that. So click the link there. We ask that student parents read through each section of the agreement form. We will be sending an emailed version of this home in the next couple of weeks. Children, all students coming into the new year will need to sign with their parents and agree to the conditions of that agreement form. Students and parents are also asked to sign to sign the form and return it by the end of the year for the next year. And you will also get an email notification of the core list apps that you'll require. If your student is already using an iPad and they are moving to a new level, there will be no other requirements really, but your classroom teachers will email you any apps that they require. However, they're mostly going to be free. We're not going to be asking for any paid apps. Thank you so much for joining us today. Apologies if the presentation was a little bit lengthy. I hope you got got stuff out of it that you needed. If you have any further questions, however, we are going to be having our Zoom session, online session, this next Wednesday night, the 13th of October, from 6 to 6:30. So jump on there. If you have any extra questions, we'd be happy to talk to you about them then. All right, thank you.